Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Childra, Korean pop rock band. They originally wanted the song to be longer, but their agency was against it. We're going to be checking out the band Xdinary Heroes. The track we're looking at is Beautiful Life. Let's dive in.
No one's here to find you.
This just has a ton of energy to it. Ooh. I like the guitar riff behind the vocals. Randomly evoking a bit of Queen. Dude, this song is all over the place. Well, at least we have a chorus. I have a point of home to understand this. Cool little moment for the keyboard to show off. Love that bass tone too.
No way to run away. You love so nice and never end. Why won't you wave your flag? Always in white. 기억해 지금 이 순간. No one's here to love you.
All right. Wow. That was certainly entertaining. I don't want that to be like my only takeaway on it. There's a lot of depth to this song that we're going to be touching on, but I think at its core, it's a very entertaining experience. It is all over the place. It has so many ideas. Somehow it slams them all together into a song that feels cohesive enough. I'm still not entirely sure how that works because honestly, the parts are so different. But it does get to showcase everyone's skills in multiple facets of their instrument and their performance. So this is a really great, I think, introductory song to them, assuming that they do more of this. If this is sort of like a one-off where no other song has as many ideas as this, maybe everything else is more straightforward pop rock, maybe it's not great as an introduction in that right. But as far as getting an opportunity to showcase all of their skills, the width of skills they have on their instruments, and the types of influences they have and the kinds of music they want to make, yeah, dude, this is phenomenal. I do kind of hope, though, that anything else I listen to them follows suit in one way or another. I expect a rather eclectic album if I were to ever check one out from them. And I guess eclectic writing is where we need to start here. There is dashes of, Queen, I think, is fairly prominent in a lot of the slower sections, but also generally piano ballads from hair metal days shows up. Actually, hair metal as a whole kind of is apparent in a couple of these places. The guitar riffs themselves remind me a lot of glam metal. The guitar riffs that are more melodically driven definitely have more of an 80s feel to me. But it's also a bit of a smorgasbord of eras too. I'm focusing on some older stuff, but you can feel 2000s era pop rock, radio rock, alternative rock in here as well, particularly looking at the more driving sections like the first verse and the chorus. And it's just really interesting to hear all of this get smashed together. I have questions about this, but I think I'm going to hold that off until the end. It has to deal with the writing process. But usually, when I hear a band who's influenced by rock or metal, it tends to be a couple of bands within a genre, or a genre as a whole that influences the band. They might have a couple of ideas outside of that, but for the most part, you can kind of find lineage through the history of metal as bands influenced one another. And so I find it really interesting to find a band that was influenced by so many different flavors of rock and metal over multiple decades of the genres. You just don't see that too often. And this feels like something that is definitely very modern in its eclectic tastes combinations, but it also feels retro revival, but like retro revival of several different eras. And I find that to be really interesting. Speaking of the plethora of skills on display here, we have guitar licks that are smoother, that are designed to create a strong melodic resonance and to just be a beautiful line. But we also have driving guitar riffs, just rule of cool stuff going on. There's chordal ideas happening, and the chordal movements are sort of all over the place. There's all sorts of different emotions pulled through the chords, a couple of different elements of harmonic theory being placed here so that we can achieve all of these different atmospheres and emotions throughout this song. The bass work is just consistently great, sitting at the bottom through most of this track and filling out the low end, being the foundation for everything. But we do get some stronger, more lead bass towards the end of the track, which I enjoyed. That's not to say that the bass is simple or boring throughout the rest of the track. They just tends not to be the emphasis. There are moving lines throughout, though. The drummer, locked in human metronome style, great fills to push energy through, high intensity drumming to really drive momentum forward, and more melodic drumming to sort of just create ambience around lighter sections. All sorts of different ideas coming through there. I think we had 2 vocalists. At least one point in the music video, it was also heavily distorted, so maybe it was purely production side of things, but there was one part in the music video where the guitarist was the one who was visually singing in the video component. And there was a change to the timbre, but again, could be the production side of things. But even our lead vocalist has more of a belted sound, has a softer, reserved sound. They had the falsetto, they had the forward projected, anthemic rock thing going on. Lots of different techniques there. And then the pianist slash keyboardist, beautiful chords during the more Queen-inspired sections, but also created textures outside of the band for more of the driving sections that are more rock-oriented. Had some wonderful runs up and down for more technical playing from there. I mean, everybody just gets a chance to show off across multiple styles on this. And I mean, that's one thing that just makes it really interesting to me. It's what creates the eclectic feel. It's not just the shifting sounds that's going on, but it's also the ways that the instruments are being played. What's more important in the performance of these instruments that stands out to me. And the fact that they just move through all of this so effortlessly is wildly intriguing to me. As for the song itself, though, what is it saying? What is it doing? I don't know. And this is where I think it's just sort of a fun ride, and I hope that there's more depth to it, but I'm just missing. It's so separated. Nothing flows into one another. I think the best we had was moving from the first verse into the first chorus. We kind of pulled that energy through, went to the high intensity chorus, and then pulled that back for something a bit groovier at the back, like 25% of the chorus. And that's just how the chorus functions. But when you pair it with the verse, driving that energy in, ramping it up, and then simmering it out with something groovier, that's just a very cool fluidity. And movement between ideas. Moving into the second verse was a bit rougher, and then anytime we brought in the piano was such a sharp shift in sound that I just they don't connect. And maybe the jarring elements in the music are intentional. There's certainly jarring elements in the music video as well. Maybe the lyrics will lean into this. But it is a song that is definitely focuses on the emphasis of stark contrast more than anything else. And I think that the first verse and first chorus flowing into each other is more of an anomaly than anything that I think they were actually aiming for. Even going on more of an emotional route, again, sharp contrast between driving energy, groove, and ballad, just really, pulling the energy out, a vacuum of momentum, and focusing on something a bit more, I'd say at most times, somber. There's definitely a victorious element to the final piano part, something a bit more larger than life and positive, but I'd say that the ones that come before it kind of a bit lower energy and kind of pull the positivity out of the song a little bit, acts as a negative contrast to the more positive sound that exists throughout the rest of the track. Is there anything else I want to add to this? I don't think so. I do, the requester, Childra, had mentioned that they originally wanted the song to be longer. I'm curious if that would have worked. There have been films in the past where they kind of don't have good flow throughout them, and it's because they ended up having to cut too much, and a director's cut comes out later, and it just works better. The pacing is more balanced. And maybe that's what could happen here. If the sharp transitions aren't intentional and they don't line up thematically with anything going on in the lyrics, maybe it's possible that sometime down the road we might get the original vision of the song, and that ends up being really well done. You know, really pushing for that epic that this song wants to be. This does feel like it's a 7, 8, maybe even a 10-minute epic that half of it has been chopped out to create something more condensed and digestible. And through that attempt to make it digestible, it's actually made it too jagged to swallow. And this actually takes me to the final point, what I sort of hinted at earlier, and I don't want to touch on this too long because it's just the way things are, I suppose, but it mentioned that the agency didn't let them make it as long as they wanted to. Is this like a K-pop group for rock people? How much agency do they have in writing their own music? I bring this up because it's such a foreign concept in the Western world of rock and metal, and maybe actually even in the Eastern world as well. When I think of like Japanese rock bands and metal bands, you don't really think too much about them being told what they can and cannot write. Rock and metal have pretty much always been counterculture. And so there's really been no rules. You do what you want because you're opposing the general norm sound. And to think of an agency telling a rock band, no, you can't do that, kind of cracks me up because it's totally unheard of. It's so unusual for the genre. And I'm just like, is that what's going on here? I do see that they are JYP Entertainment. And while I don't know who JYP Entertainment represents, I have seen them before when we've checked out other J-pop groups. So maybe that's what this is. It's a J-pop agency realizing that they can capture a rock fan base and going in that direction. But I don't know how much agency J-pop, or sorry, K-pop, I don't know where I was going with the J. I think it's JYP. This is a Korean group, I believe. But maybe K-pop artists have more agency in their choreography and composition than I'm thinking too. So I don't know, it's a whole world of music that I'm very unfamiliar with, and I could always use more education in. So if you're familiar with any of this, the process of making music as a K-pop band or artist, and how that works with your agency and all that stuff, let me know, because I'm a bit out of my depth with this, but it does sound kind of strange from how I usually view rock music to be created. All right, I'm going to see if I can find some lyrics for this. All right, so color me surprised when I look up the lyrics and there's 5 vocalists, which it feels a lot like when I look up K-pop lyrics, where every verse is handled by a different person. Now, granted, that's not exactly what we have here, though. Many of the verses jump between vocalists. In fact, verse 1 and verse 2 have 3 vocals each. But we do have someone who pops up exclusively for a pre-chorus to the second chorus. That's their only section. And so I find this interesting. So I went back to listen to the song with the lyrics pulled up, seeing when the vocals shift. Yeah, 100%, you can hear it. I don't know how I totally missed that. A lot of their vocals are very similar, and maybe that's how it kind of blurred together. They were close enough that I didn't make any perception of change and just assumed it was all one vocalist. But also who I thought was the main vocalist, the one who does all of the pretty melodic stuff that sits alongside the piano, that's actually not their lead vocalist. That's the bass player. They don't have a lead vocalist. I went back to the very beginning of the song where you get a clear shot of everybody in that room. There's 2 keyboardists, 2 guitarists, the bassist, and the drummer. Yeah, everybody plays an instrument and most of them sing. This is wild. I might have to go down this rabbit hole. I've enjoyed some K-pop in the past. I think this is the first time that I'm going to have to dive into an album, though. Very impressive to see all of this going on. But actually seeing that there's so many vocalists and that everybody has an instrument kind of leans into this whole K-pop role too, where everybody is an active participant of the entire performance on every level. When you look at a K-pop group, everyone dances and everyone sings. Well, in this case, we kind of ditched the dancing, the choreography for instrument playing, but you can actually see in the sections where they're playing their instruments, like most rock bands, they're not just standing still either. They're bouncing around. They're putting on a physical show as well. So it might just be less choreographed, less rehearsed, and like most rock performances, just whatever it feels like you should be doing, that the music speaks through you. So that was a wild revelation to have here. But then when we get to the lyrics, I don't know, man. There's definitely a part of trying to find your place in society and realizing that what you're trying to look for is a lie. It complains about having a screen in your head that tells you what's real, but it's actually all a lie. It says, war is peace, freedom slavery, ignorance is strength. We're quoting Orwell's 1984 there. The chorus kicks in. The world says the truth. The world that says the truth is a lie. A trial that shows a lie is the truth. Don't tell me lies. I'll crush you hiding in the ironic screen. Want you to join. And I think this is mostly an attack on misinformation in general, particularly though the ones that are told through the screen. And this could be television, but I think more prominently, especially for, well, maybe less prominently. I actually don't know much about Korean culture, South Korean culture, I'm going to assume. Y'all can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But media, social media, phones, I think is particularly the screen that they're talking about here. And it's basically about destroying that which would obscure the truth of a situation. And then there's a specific person, though. The refrain says, you're caught in lies that never end. Why don't you wave your flag? Oh, is it white? Remember this very moment. No one's here to find you. This idea that this specific person who's been spreading lies is giving up after being caught and realizing that there's no one around them who will pick them back up. That's pretty much what this song goes on. There are some interesting lines, though, that I'm not sure how it relates to all of that. Verse 2 kicks off with, a night without the moon. All right, tonight's the night. If you're thinking the same as me, you'll say, hell no. Okay, maybe we're saying no to misinformation, but what is the night without a moon? I'm not too sure about that one. There is a bridge later on that says, when I'm gone, my body may turn to dust, but my song of love will carry me away and haunt you forever. Okay, I kind of get the gist behind that. But generally speaking, when I think of people who spread misinformation, they're not really caring about specific people. I don't think that you haunting them is really going to be that big of a deal to them. Maybe. I don't know. And then there's verse 1 that says, I was told to kill for my peace, a salute to the intangible king, want to submit completely, whether it fits or not, die. And like, I kind of get that this line is about rebellion, but I don't really get the perfect gist of it. Maybe it's a translational thing. I don't know. That just kind of reads awkward to me. But pretty much everything else fits into this concept of having a very specific you who spreads misinformation. and wanting to take them down. I mean, I can get behind that. Here's another neat thing. They've been around since 2022. They've put out 6 EPs. This is actually, I'm going to assume, the first single off of their latest EP since it launched on the same day the EP did. And they have 1 LP from last year. They've been around a while. And a lot of music to dig into, I suppose, if you dig this. Which I did. Those are my thoughts. Xdinary Heroes' Beautiful Life. The music video, I think, makes less sense now that I'm thinking about it. What is real? That's kind of a weird thing to say after a song about discovering the truth. I don't know. I'm lost on that. These are my thoughts, though. What are yours? Did you enjoy this? Anything stand out to you? Is there anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on if I misspoke about something? What are your opinions or perspectives on this track? Please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.